Hi again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our first webinar of 2017. I hope everyone had an amazing time in December and Happy New Year, and I hope everyone is as excited as we are about the new year ahead of us. My name is Mathilde, and I'm in charge of marketing here at Amity, and I couldn't be happier about this webinar being the first webinar of the year. We have our friends over at Triton who are incredibly knowledgeable, who will be presenting today on the topic, Isn't it time your customer service became customer success? So we have Jen, who is the Vice President of Client Success, and Steve, who is the Executive Vice President at Triton. Thank you so much for being with us, Jen and Steve.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Just before we begin, I'm going to let everyone know a couple of housekeeping notes. As usual, we will be on Twitter, so you can use the hashtag CSWebinar. You can tag us at GetAmity and at Triton. And if you see a slide that you think is great and you want to share it, don't hesitate, take a screenshot, share it, use the hashtag. I will be on Twitter, and I'd love to engage with you guys. Another important thing is, as usual, we will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session. So you will see that there is a chat window at the bottom left corner of your screen, and you can enter your questions in there. And as the presentation goes, if you have any questions, feel free to send them, and Jen and Steve kindly accepted to answer them as the presentation goes. And we will also come back to those at the end of the session. We'll keep some time at the end to answer all of your questions. So as I was saying, Jen and Steve are incredibly knowledgeable about customer success. So this is really a great opportunity for all of you to get all the answers to your questions and to get a good start for 2017 and for your customer success resolutions for the new year. So I think, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to you, Jen and Steve. Thank you so much for being with us. Happy New Year to you guys, too.
All right, thank you. Well, welcome, everybody. My name is Steve Lichtenfels. I'm Executive Vice President at Triton's down here in Bethesda, Maryland, just outside of beautiful Washington, D.C., and I'm joined this afternoon by Jen McLean-Rogan, our Vice President of Client Success.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Steve mentioned, I'm the VP of Client Success. I've been in this IT user adoption and customer success industry for almost 20 years now. Just a little bit about my background is in business management and organizational development, which has served me very well in helping our clients facilitate change, incorporate new technology into their daily routines, and more importantly, gain value from it.
Indeed. And here at Triton's Consulting, we're the experts in customer success and software adoption. We established the company back here in 2006. And our practice enables clients to drive profitable customer success and accelerated software adoption, obviously the two things that are most key to customer success. We're the glue that binds together software vendors and buyers, and our specialty is delivering fast and effective consulting and training services to help our clients meet their needs and satisfy their budgets. We're going to get moving through here on our slideshow. The chat window is open, so if you've got, let me move back here a little, we're a little trigger happy. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat window, and we'll try to take them during the broadcast here as we go through where they're germane, or we'll catch up with everybody here at the end. So today's topic is, isn't it time your customer support became customer success? And if you resemble most software as a service, SaaS, PaaS vendors, you have a great product that you've developed, implemented by a team of gifted professionals. However, in today's marketplace, you're likely finding that profit margins are going down rather than up because it's becoming harder to get and keep customers. That's because the industry shift from the traditional sales model to subscription pricing has completely upended how vendors must operate to accelerate profits and long-term growth. Okay, so what made you successful yesterday will probably not make you successful tomorrow. And if your organization lacks an effective customer success program, then you're likely to have a growing problem that could cost you more than you think.
That's right, Steve. And from working with clients, we know that CS is still a bit unclear for most people, which makes sense when you think about it. CS is still a relatively new field, and most people haven't seen it done before or seen it done well. In fact, we found that most organizations are making this all too common mistake of thinking that customer success is just a fancier name for providing customer support services. And as a result, we're seeing organizations holding on to 4 habits or practices that may have worked well back in the day with the traditional sales model, but it's actually leading them to higher risks and higher costs in today's subscription-based pricing model. But before we talk about those 4 practices and the key shifts that organizations need to make to move from costly customer support services to profitable CS, Steve and I are going to provide an overview of what CS is, just to set the foundation for the rest of our conversation. And we're also going to share some data with you to help clarify why CS is so important these days, because this is where we're seeing a lot of organizations get stuck. Most organizations are focusing on how to do CS before they help people understand why it's important to their company's bottom line. And as a result, they end up wasting a lot of time and money doing the wrong things that don't move the needle forward. So we want to help you avoid that by giving you the information you need to move your CS initiative forward.
Right, and that's a great point. Obviously, the support across the organization is so crucial. So for the roadmap in our discussion today as to what CS is, it's important that you do a high-level overview as to exactly what customer success is going to be in your organization. We've been doing this for about 10 years now and know from experience that CS is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. Every organization will have different configurations of their CS model, and they'll have different actions, different precise actions that they need to take to be successful. Obviously, we can't cover everything for everybody in the 45 minutes to an hour that we have today, so we welcome the opportunity to talk to you more about your specific needs and actions after the webinar. So if you'd like to, you can also email us your questions at info@tritons.com. And if you have questions along the way, please type them in the chat window, and we'll try to answer them as many as we can before the end if possible. Okay. So what is customer success? Well, there's a lot of definitions out there. And the definition that we use with our clients is that CS is a revenue and growth generator for your company by helping your customers achieve value from your product that they aren't able to achieve on their own. So notice the emphasis on your. It's your company, your customers, and your product. Make no mistake that the objective of CS is to increase your revenue and growth by reducing your customer churn and acquisition costs, as well as increasing your recurring revenue and customer lifetime value. So hopefully everyone agrees that those are 4 really desirable outcomes. And the great news is that these outcomes can absolutely be achieved with effective CS. So in case those 4 outcomes weren't desirable enough, just look at these staggering statistics. So basically what all of this is saying is customer churn will kill your return. Every customer that cancels a subscription or even reduces the number of licenses under contract has a dramatic impact on your company's bottom line. Even a slight reduction in churn can have a significant impact on your organization's profits and valuation. If you're not experiencing customer churn today, then consider yourself lucky, but don't get too comfortable. Competition in the SaaS world is heating up at a rapid pace, and you will likely encounter a very competitive landscape as you go after more market share because of 2 primary things. It's easier to develop software functionality quickly and for other vendors to clone your functionality with a few tweaks here and there than it was 10 years ago. It's also easier than ever for customers to try your product or leave you for a better product, for one that brings them value faster, easier, and cheaper. The combination of these 2 things is creating the industry shift we're seeing today in which organizations are recognizing a pressing need to change their approach to getting and keeping their customers happy and rapidly developing customer success programs to decrease churn and increase recurring revenue, growth, profitability, and market share. Jen?
And that's exactly right, Steve. What we see happening is organizations are getting overwhelmed, trying to juggle everything, and they're not sure where to start or what to do first. So based on our experience working with clients, we've come up with 4 universal shifts that software vendors need to make today to be successful with CS. Okay, so the top 4 shifts your organization needs to make now to move from customer support to customer success are: move from technical outcomes to business outcomes, move from an initial sales strategy to a retention and expansion strategy, move from a reactive model to a proactive model, and move from a one department function to an all departments function. So we're going to talk about each of these shifts, but let's take a closer look at the first one. So the first shift is moving from technical outcomes to business outcomes. This is a big one, and it's not easy for most vendors.
Definitely not.
Yeah. If your definition of success is getting a customer system live, on time, and within budget, then you're really operating as customer support. If your definition of success is helping customers attain value and ROI after go live, then you're operating as customer success. And here's why. The simple truth is customers don't renew subscriptions that aren't used over time. So in order to reduce churn and increase that recurring revenue, software vendors now need to deliver outcomes, not just products. So I'm going to walk you through a visual model that we use to try to illustrate the key aspects of this shift and the things that you really need to understand. Okay, so here we have a time to value illustration based on go live, or when your software is implemented for your client. At the time of go live, customers and vendors have spent a lot of time and money in finding each other, learning about the product via marketing and sales, customizing the product, and implementing the product. Those are considered sunk costs, or the cost of investing in a product or a customer. And the only way to really recover those costs is if the customer uses your product and it consistently brings them value and business benefits, such as helping them save time or money, increase sales, revenue, and growth, or whatever the desired business outcomes were that prompted them to purchase your product in the first place. If the customer uses and gets value from your product, then both the customer and you, the vendor, can recover your sunk costs, achieve your desired business outcomes, and a return on your investment, which is a win-win for both. But here's the catch. In order for this to work, it's really important for vendors to realize that success now happens after go live. The goalposts have essentially shifted, and go live is no longer the end goal. Now the end goal is all about what happens after go live. And not just 1 to 2 weeks after go live, but months, years, or as long as that customer is paying for your product. Thinking you're done at go live is a costly mistake, and it's one that we see so often that we've coined it the go live and go home approach, because it's focused on technical outcomes, such as making sure the product meets all technical requirements, delivering the product on time and within budget, and making sure people are trained in how to use the system's features and functionality. Now, all of these are important activities, but they're not sufficient in this new industry in which vendors' profitability relies on customers realizing and acknowledging value from using your product after go live, not just implementation of your product at go live. Which brings us to the second shift software vendors need to make to be successful at CS.
All right, sorry for the delay there, a little technical glitch on our end. The second shift here is a move from the initial sales strategy to a retention and expansion strategy. So if your organization's revenue growth and strategy is focused on getting the initial sale, then you're probably still living in a customer support ecosystem. If your organization's revenue and growth strategy is focused on account retention, expansion, then you're moving in the customer success direction. 80% of your customers' revenue will come from 20% of your existing customers. I'm sure everybody's heard the 80-20 rule before. So you need to be laser focused on your customer success post-initial sale to get those renewals. So in a sense, your sales organization switches from selling sales to selling renewals. If you lose key customers, then you will lose a huge chunk of your revenue. And go even deeper into the hole if you have to spend a lot of time and money on marketing and sales to replace those customers. You need to think of CS as a continuous relationship over time. You're not selling your client once, you're selling them over and over again. Earlier in our talk, we mentioned that customer success is not only used to mitigate customer churn, it's also used to generate additional growth and profitability from not only retaining your customers, but also being able to easily expand customer accounts once they experience, realize, and recognize value from using your product. So let's look at how that works with CS by expanding upon the model that Jen just used to illustrate the first shift. Here we have an example of the typical change in the software world as we move from a delivered packaged software world to a SaaS delivered world without CS to a SaaS delivered world with CS. If we look down in the revenue streams category, we can see that the old software model, where you would go in initially, create a huge sale, deliver the software to the customer, have them install it on their premises or in their in-house data center, and then collect a residual each year of maintenance across the lifetime value of that customer. And if we look, using this just as an example, that old model looks like $2 million at the end of 10 years in that old configuration of the large upfront payment and then smaller yearly payments thereafter. Move that then to present day with customer success, and we see that initial payment by the customer goes down substantially, but the payment keeps up over time. What we're looking at here in the present model is what happens without CS. So what's the big difference if I don't have it? Well, generally, since you're not going to be continuously engaged with the customer, by the time the customer is moving out a few years, they may be experiencing pain or dissatisfaction with the software that your organization doesn't have visibility to. What happens then is they start to shrink the number of licenses they're willing to continue to pay for. Now, this may change depending on how the customer's contract is set up, whether they pay monthly or bi-yearly or annually. The point here is that without the visibility and interaction that customer success provides, the likelihood is that that lifetime value of the customer is going to move down, not up. So what we're seeing here from the past model of delivered software and heavy upfront payments to the SaaS model is there is a risk that's been transferred from the customer to the SaaS vendor. That risk can result in a substantially lower lifetime value of the customer. So we drop down to the future state line, and we see that this is where customer success really proves its value. So if you're a SaaS vendor today with an effective customer success organization where you're continuously engaged with your customer, it's an evolving, evolutionary relationship, you have the ability to maintain as well as expand that customer relationship. So over a lifetime value of the customer world, you're looking at something that has the potential to look like 2 times the old model. And in this particular situation, you can see from this example that customer churn has a dramatic impact on the vendor's bottom line now that large upfront payments no longer exist and recurring revenues and account expansion is where the money is. If vendors can shift their focus to customer success and retain and expand upon recurring revenue, they can significantly reduce churn and account contraction, decrease the cost and negative cash flow associated with acquiring new customers, and increase carryover revenue, account expansion via cross-sell and upsell for even more licenses, modules, and functionalities. The customer then becomes a champion and the key promoter of your product within the marketplace. And that will drive new sales, market goodwill, as well as second-order word-of-mouth type revenue, where so much of the technology sales market is. Current figures state that something like 50% of technology sales come via a personal referral. Of course, there's a flip side to this, that if customers aren't getting value from your product, they'll likely talk negatively about your brand or product, which will hurt sales. So perhaps this is why we're starting to hear also that customer success is about where 90% of the revenue is. That's huge and certainly worth a closer look at your company investing in an effective profit-generating customer success program.
Thanks, Steve. So that brings us to our third shift that we want to talk about, which is moving from a reactive model to a proactive model. And this means that if you're focused on helping customers after an issue has occurred, like a customer support or help desk, then you're customer support. If you're focused on getting in front of barriers to adoption and driving actions that help people incorporate your software into their daily routines to get value from it, then you're customer success. And here's why. It's critical for vendors to help drive adoption of their products by delivering services that their customers either can't or won't do for themselves to be successful with your product in their environment.
Very important.
Very important. And by adoption, and I'm not sure if everyone has sort of the same understanding of what that means, when we use the term adoption, we mean incorporating the system effectively into their daily work practices and getting value from it. Because research indicates that 50% of software functionality paid for and licensed by organizations is not actually used. So no matter how good your sales team is at selling 1,000 licenses, if you don't proactively help that customer adopt your software and use those licenses in a short period of time, then what you'll likely encounter is a lot of heartburn with that customer and a lot of time and money wasted in reactive firefighting mode. You'll probably get buried in support and enhancement requests, and you'll still run the risk of losing that customer or a number of licenses at renewal time. Does that sound familiar to anybody out there?
Yeah.
So think of CS this way. The companies that have been the most successful with CS realize that no adoption equals no value equals no renewal. Okay, so we're going to have Steve walk us through a typical reactive model that we see a lot of organizations making that just doesn't work very well anymore, and then I'll take you through a proactive model that does work for comparison purposes.
Sure. So on this slide that we have up right now, this is the typical reactive implementation process that most vendors use. And it typically has a large focus on go live and reacting to technical support requests after go live, not actual user value. So most vendors are largely focused on marketing, getting the initial sale, getting the system set up, and getting to go live, as we mentioned before. They may also provide some system training and help desk support if there's an issue, and there might even be a documented escalation process to further ingrain the organization's reactive model, in which the customers are given a dedicated point of contact to call when they're upset and not getting value from the system. Okay, why might this be a problem? Well, these activities tend to be very siloed, and they focus on getting a particular assignment done, open the ticket, close the ticket. These activities, whether it's your help desk or someone else, regardless of who helps the person, this is not creating value. This does not solve what the customer is looking for. And as vendors, we've talked to those folks who have CS departments and are largely focused on doing quarterly business reviews, account management, roadmap discussions to increase their customers' knowledge of the value they're not getting. And again, why might this be a problem? Well, letting your customer know that they're not getting any value from your product and not doing anything about it is probably the worst thing you can do for a client relationship. Think of it. Most companies are not experts in software user adoption, and they'll not know what changes that they need to make to their organization to get value from your product. And again, let's focus back on what CS is. It's getting the customer to get value and acknowledge value from your product. So as a result, you'll need to help guide them and facilitate the changes that they need to make to be successful with your product. You can't leave it up in the air. It can't be, responding to them, when there's a problem only. It has to be continuous. All right? And that's what effective and profitable CS is. It's going beyond just creating awareness and delivering actionable services so your customers can realize and see the value that they're getting from your product, all right, rather than the potential value that they're not getting. So how do you do that?
So you do that by having your CS team building relationships with your customers and engaged in proactive two-way communications, not one-way pushing information out, but actual two-way communications with your customers early, very early in the process, well before go live, so that your CS team can be effective at and focused on 4 key proactive CS services, which are, 1, helping your customers clearly define their business needs and their definition of success, not yours, but their definition, so you know if you can hit it with your product. In other words, what criteria will your customers be using to evaluate whether or not they will keep your product at renewal time? That's really important information for you to know, and the earlier you can get that in the process, the better. Another service is identifying and evaluating potential barriers to software adoption in your customer's organization. Here's something to keep in mind. Most adoption issues are not related to system features and functionality. And these are not issues that can be solved through system training at Go Live. Most of these issues are related to organizational issues or operational issues such as policies and processes that prevent or discourage system use. So the next thing that the CS team also needs to focus on is determining and delivering the CS services that your customers need to overcome those adoption barriers. Using that example about policies and processes, you may need to help them evaluate and revise those policies and processes to ensure that they achieve the desired business outcomes that will yield renewals and expansions for your company. So this is a little different than how most customer support operations function. You're going beyond just addressing issues after the fact. You're being proactive about going in, working with your customers to find out where in their organization do they have issues that may prevent or discourage use of the system. And they're probably not issues that they're doing on purpose. It's things they're not even realizing. And so you need to have those consulting skills to be able to go in there and evaluate their environment and help them overcome those issues. And lastly, you need to be increasing your customers' knowledge of the value that they're getting from your product. And you do that through metrics, reporting, and reviews. But it doesn't stop there. Your CS team needs to work alongside and work closely with your marketing department, your sales department, your product development teams, and your existing customer support team. And they need to be sharing key information that they're learning about the customer, such as success stories and testimonials that marketing can use while building their marketing materials. The CS team should be sharing that key renewal criteria with their sales department so they can be on point in getting those renewals with those customers. Also, any customer enhancement requests that the CS team gets from the customers, they need to be sharing that information with product development so product development can really understand why are those enhancements needed. What is it that the customer is trying to achieve with that enhancement? So that effective feedback loop between these teams becomes a competitive differentiator that makes selling your product and getting renewals a whole lot easier, because your customer will know that you are 100% committed to their success even before they start using your product, which is really key. And it brings us to our last key shift, which is you need to move CS from being the function of one department to the function of many departments. If CS is the focus and sole function of one department, then you're really operating like customer support. If CS is the focus and central function of all departments, then you're customer success. Here's why. To be effective at CS, it needs to be a customer-centric orientation at every level of your organization, in every department of your organization, where value is driven through every interaction with your customer along their journey with you, from pre-sale to renewal year after year after year. So what we're talking about here is a new kind of customer engagement, because your customers purchase your product based on hope but they renew your product based on experience. So it's not just the CS team that needs to be focused on customer outcomes and recurring revenue. It should be everyone in your organization. Because recurring revenue not only depends on your customers having a great experience with your product, it depends on your customers having a great experience with your people. As a result, the focus of CS must be on alignment and collaboration of all departments that impact the customer experience from start to finish. This means you need to get your entire organization on board with the logic of customer success and thinking about how they contribute to successful customer outcomes. Because every department typically has a different touch point with customers. It's either a direct touch point or an indirect touch point, which creates the overall customer experience. For example, your executives need to be on board with the value of customer success in order to allocate resources appropriately. Marketing, sales, product development, operations, etc., all need to be thinking about how they contribute to value realization and keeping customers 10+ years. And of course, your CS team needs to lead this charge and serve as that missing link or the hub that facilitates customer-focused collaboration, communication, and coordinated action among all departments across the enterprise. When you start to do this in the beginning, it will be very easy to step on each other's toes and things will fall through the cracks. So it's really important that that CS team is empowered and has the accountability to keep everyone together and focused on customer outcomes and recurring revenue. And here's the hard part. This will likely require new roles, responsibilities, processes, incentives, tools, and skills across your organization. This is not easy to do, and it doesn't happen overnight. You need to think of it like an organizational change. It's a change in how people spend their time, what they do, what they don't do, how they approach their relationships, and how they keep those relationships going. It's doing things differently than you've always done, even the things that made you successful in the past.
Yeah, so part of the message here is to think of CS as a journey. We mentioned earlier that it's an evolution. It changes over time, and it is most definitely not a one-size-fits-all model. So you'll need to evolve and figure it out as you go, because CS is not something that once you establish it today, 5 years from now can be the same thing. Your market will change, your customer will change, your people will change. So keep in mind it's meant to be a journey, and it's best to think of it that way. Your customers have needs that will vary by industry size and the product that they purchase from you. And your customer will also change in terms of what the competitive landscape might look like today for that customer may change dramatically because of some new next thing that happens to drop into the marketplace. And you'll need to optimize and improve your CS strategy to react to that with new tools and services over time, because CS is no longer a nice-to-have service for your customer. It's really now an entry fee if you're going to be a player in the SaaS marketplace. So there are some key questions to think about as you move forward with your CS initiative. Have you ensured that your organization understands what CS is and why it's so important? Do they understand the industry shift and the impact on your bottom line and the growth that it's going to drive and how it impacts everyone across your organization? To Jen's point earlier, this is a company-wide initiative. It's not siloed with CS, it's not siloed with sales, it's certainly not siloed with IT. Next point, you want to look at how have you developed a profitable CS service that can accelerate customer value realization, which should include at a minimum defining your strategy and developing a tiered service offering and launching a pilot program so you can prove that you're actually doing the things that you think you're doing. Third, have you allocated the time and resources to build your customer success program and develop or acquire the capacity needed to do that at scale? We've talked with a lot of companies, and it's interesting. We'll talk to a company that's planning on doubling in size over the next 2 years. They really do need to think long and hard about how that's going to impact their ability to maintain an effective customer success platform with their customer. Because when they're twice as big as they are right now, they're going to need to be doing things a little bit differently. And it's important to keep that in mind in a scale-based forecast.
It's also important to keep in mind that CS requires lead time, effort, and oversight to collaborate with all these internal departments, to develop the processes and tools and methods for delivering effective CS services, for ensuring that your CS staff has the skills and the ability needed to deliver professional CS services well, and to ensure your CS program and teams meet current and future needs, just as Steve described.
Yeah, these are all things that we like to help our CS clients do, because as a trusted advisor, a CS expert and partner like Triton's can help lead the way to do things faster, easier, and create better results.
Basically, we fast-track our clients through what can be a very complicated CS development process if you don't have the resources or the capacity or the CS experience and expertise in-house. So our CS training and consulting packages are designed to quickly identify your needs and provide you the tools, playbooks, no-fail formulas for developing an effective CS program with scalable, repeatable, and profitable, of course, CS services. So you can read more about our service offerings on our website. We encourage you to do that at tritons.com. And, of course, get in touch with us at info@tritons.com. We can help you. It's what we do. We do have about 10 minutes or so left for questions. We got one or two along the way, but we're going to open that up now, and we'll answer as many as we can.
Sure. So if anybody has any additional questions, you can type them in the chat window here on our screen, or you can email them to info@tritons.com. One of the questions we have here from Andrew: what can you do if you see that customers want to leave due to the software not having certain features and your company refuses to implement those features?
Andrew, that's a great question. So as a CS team member, it would be your responsibility or fall on your area of expertise to talk to that client about why that functionality is so important to them. What is it that they're hoping to achieve with that functionality, or what aren't they able to achieve without that functionality? So really having that back and forth, probing questions, conversation with your customers so that you can then take that information to your product development team and share with them why this is important to your customer. Not just at a high level, but really what are the desired outcomes that customer is trying to achieve with your product that they're not able to achieve with the current features and functionality. That will help you sort of build the business case for why that's important and enable your organization to make a better decision about whether or not they should develop that functionality in their system or if they should stick with their guns and not do it. The key of getting that information and having that conversation with the different players, and that's really where the CS team becomes very valuable and helpful in making sure the customer and the vendor organization are on the same page and understanding each other's needs.
Yeah, it's another proof point into why CS needs to be organizationally wide. So not just siloed within customer success or siloed within sales. It's important to have that type of communication and collaboration across the company so that it's more than one person understanding the impact that a certain issue is having. And particularly when it comes, and Andrew's comment here is not at all unusual. Everybody has experience dealing with, a particular client that they want this one thing in the software and they're going to be the squeaky wheel till they get the grease. But if you have a completely integrated customer success environment across your company, CS has the opportunity to surface that issue and get it looked at by the appropriate people. There may be 10 good reasons why the company won't implement a particular function, or there might be 10 good reasons why they might. But unless it gets looked at by all the people who are stakeholders in that situation, it's going to be hard to move the needle for that particular customer. but it's also important for customer success to know that the other organizations and other departments in the company have their back and they're all working for the same thing, and that's for that customer to see the greatest value possible in your software.
Great. And there was a question earlier about, do you really need to move customer support to customer success? Can the two coexist? And that's such a great question, and one that we get frequently, actually. They can coexist, and they should. So customer support is focused on very different functions than customer success. In our world and where we see CS being effective, customer support is more working with end users on system features and functionality and making sure that they can use them effectively, whereas customer success, you're dealing or working with your customers at a different level. You're more at the executive level, at the leads, working with managers, and figuring out how their organization operates and what might get in the way of people being successful with the product. So it's a very different focus and at a very different level. So they should absolutely coexist. Both are needed. Which brings me to another point that I'm going to bring up that we often hear when talking with clients, and that is when you start talking about building a CS program and a CS team, there will be other departments that are going to start to get nervous about that. They're going to think that the CS team is replacing them or taking some of their value away. For example, sales might think, well, if the CS team is coming in and talking to the customers, that's really my job. So how does that impact me? So thinking about that as you begin developing your CS team and your program and being very clear that your CS team does not replace any of your other roles and departments. They add value to them. They help sales do their job easier, better, and faster. They help marketing by giving marketing the information they need to do better marketing materials. It's not in place of, and they're not taking value away. They're adding value. So that's a key point, and one that we often struggle with our clients.
Well, and the way sometimes it gets referred to rather, inartfully is that, does CS become the dumping ground for, every problem with the customer? And the answer is no. Obviously, if there's, technical issues with a customer's application or how they're using it, either correctly or incorrectly, that doesn't necessarily belong in the CS department. But the idea is that having a company-wide focus is important. And for example, CS is not an IT function. So those things that belong to IT should stay with IT. Those things that belong with CS should go to CS. And a lot of those need to get socialized within your organization so that the different stakeholders sit down and say, okay, no, this belongs here, this belongs here. And the assignment of where those go should really be driven by, is this assignment going to put us in the best possible position to provide value and to get value recognized, as opposed to just an easy place to drop it. But to Jen's point, CS and customer support can exist, do exist. There's a lot of companies out there doing both. And it's a question of segmenting the internal roles and responsibilities, as well as probably a certain level of segmenting which customers access those. Maybe some is higher touch, some is lower touch. But happy to talk to you more about that question because it's a pretty common one. Sure, we've got a question here from Priscilla.
Priscilla asks, if you can give top qualities in a CS rep, what would that be? What type of experience is suggested to be in this type of role due to the heavy communications and knowledge needed? And that is another question we get a lot, and I love it because there's such misunderstanding about what the skill set is that's needed to be an effective CS team member.
Well, they need to be good communicators and have a lot of knowledge, right?
Well, yeah, yeah, at a minimum. That is true. Those are good skills to have there. And we find that a lot of the other skills that are in technology-oriented organizations is around developing and delivering great software, which are good skills, but not for a CS team person. They are really focused on getting and keeping customers happy. They shouldn't be the technical people alone. They're the relationship people. They need to be able to investigate, diagnose, and resolve adoption issues within their customer's organization. So you need to be very skilled at how to drive adoption and facilitate change within an organization. This is not something that we typically find in a lot of organizations, and it's absolutely something that we help our clients do either through training on how to drive adoption or consulting packages to help clients who don't have the capacity or they don't have the skills in-house and they're not really interested in investing the time and money in doing that. So that's where we can come in. But that is really, really important, is having that organizational development knowledge and how to drive adoption and have those consulting skills to do it well.
Yeah, the consulting skills and the concept of, just consultative engagement is certainly valuable. But I think one of the personal characteristics is someone who's inquisitive. They're not going to stop at, the very first answer that they get. Because it's, we've all had that experience where we think we've solved the problem for the customer, yet somehow it keeps repeating itself. And what it's saying to us is, okay, we need to go deeper. We need to expand our field of vision here and look at different things to say, okay, what keeps this thing coming back? So from a qualities in a CS rep, I think the inquisitive piece is important because, many times, especially if you're remote, knowing that there's more than one question to ask is going to be important to getting, to the heart of that matter. And, happy to take a phone call on this offline and talk about it some more. I've got a question here from Manish. Who should be in charge of renewals and upsells in an account, a CSM or do we bring in another person? Well, that's the, one of the holy grail questions that's out there because every organization, looks at this differently. I think we have our own particular insights, on that as a consulting firm, but it really does come down to the organization in terms of, what is the best process for a particular organization to follow. A lot of organizations, have a system where once the sales team sells an account, they drop the contract into finance, and then they're off to their next deal, and never did they come back again. Others are more involved over the life of the customer, and assigning a change. And we just had a conversation come up with this last week with a client here in DC where they're looking at, okay, do we give CS the opportunity to do upsells and renewals, or do we leave that with the salesperson, and what effect does it have given our growth plans? So, ideally, over time in a SaaS environment, the CSMs should be able to handle renewals and upsells. But that's by no means anybody's hard and fast rule yet. And again, conversely, in some organizations where the level of complexity in the sale, may or may not point to CSM being the actual individuals who do that, there can be a middle ground. Manish, I think, as you have there on the end of your question, do we bring in another person? There could be somebody who's a hybrid of CS and sales that would be responsible for that function. So there's a couple of different ways to address that issue. And fortunately or unfortunately, every company is still different. And really, at the end of the day, it should reside with who can do it best.
Yeah, okay, so here's another question. What are the key metrics that typical CS is measured on? We're still working at our organization to figure this out. And there's a similar question right next to it around the same thing. So what should I measure my CSM on? Is it NPS, ARR retained, adoption, customer health? What's the best practice here? So those are two similar questions that I think we can answer in one. And those are really good questions. So what we recommend is that for measuring the effectiveness and success of your CS team, remember it should be all about focused on recurring revenue. The whole point of CS is to be a profit center. It is to increase your growth and your revenue. So that's how you want to measure the effectiveness of your CS program for your CS team? Are you getting more renewals year after year after year? Are you reducing customer churn? Have you reduced the cost for new customers? So all of that, those metrics start to show the larger picture of, are you doing the right things? Is your CS program moving the needle? Did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, again, it's a, for lack of a better term, there's a dashboard of metrics that I think, a CS organization is going to look like. And, obviously at the top line of that is, what does my renewal, retention, customer sat look like? And what, factors do I have in place to effectively and accurately measure that? And if I do, kind of know what those things are, do my CSMs have the tools and the training to know what to do with that data? No sense giving somebody an airplane if they don't know how to fly it. So the idea here is that CSM should be measured on, not only, what they need to know, but what they need to know to do something about it. And in looking kind of broadly across the organization, ARR, retained, adoption levels, customer health, what's the QBR say? I think you need to, look at that. As we've said, CS is not a one-size-fits-all model. If you look at your individual company, and let's say you're a SaaS vendor who's, baked on monthly recurring revenue, and your client is, you're invoicing and seeing the client pay monthly. Obviously, that's a very short-term, highly dynamic environment. And, customer health, I think, is going to be a critical gauge, in that. So what are the metrics you have around customer health? Because if they have the opportunity to stop paying on any given month or any given quarter, that doesn't give you a lot of lead time to fix things. So, the long answer to the short question is there's a variety of factors that you should look at, I think, to give everybody the fairest view, but also the knowledge that they have the actionable intelligence to know what to do when certain data comes their way so that they can affect the change. And again, happy to take a phone call on this and talk about it offline. We've got another question here from Dave, and we'll try to get wrapped up here. Knowing that CS is a company-wide initiative, what in our experience, where have you seen a CS team work more effectively in an organization? Meaning, does it reside in the sales department, marketing department, support department? And where does it get off the ground with more success? Another holy grail question.
Yeah, great question. And, I think that sort of depends on the organization, but I think the key thing here is that the CS team is that hub that coordinates all of those departments being focused on customer outcomes and recurring revenue. Most of the time we see it in an operations department. But again, the point is not to silo the CS team. They are to work alongside all of the departments, so it can be a company-wide initiative. So I don't really have like a specific answer other than where it would make sense in your organization to give that CS program the most empowerment and accountability for a customer-focused orientation across your company.
Yeah, so if we go back to Jen's comment about CS being a hub, I think that's probably the most apt visualization of what it should look like. So having CS at the center, and off on one spoke is sales, off on one spoke is marketing, off on one spoke is IT, off on one spoke, let's say, is a support or logistics, whoever the individual stakeholders are. And CS is in the middle, if you will, because that's the place that gives it the opportunity to provide visibility to all the other organizations so that everybody understands, what's needed to generate the type of success that you're looking to have. So again, as a SaaS vendor or someone who's in a monthly recurring revenue business where, customer renewal and retention is key, all that information that flows into CS from the customer field, and presuming it's a segmented customer field because you need different CS offerings for different size customers with different needs. It can only come in one place in order to be truly effective, because if it comes into 4 different places, 4 different ways, you may end up with 4 different people looking at it in 4 different directions, and the ability then to get consensus and come up with an effective solution or an effective plan gets mitigated. So from the first idea here is to make sure that the different departments have the type of organizational and intellectual buy-in that you need to get the support and collaboration and communication from these other departments. I mean, this is, it takes strong organizations. This is not a touchy-feely, type concept. This is strictly rooted in factual information, as well as, the knowledge of what the impacts are of that information, and the knowledge of, what do we do to fix this. So if, we're looking at a situation where, 3 or 4 CSMs are seeing a particular problem, that needs to get paid attention to. And they need to be able to have a chain of communication and a chain of command that they can take that up so that it gets looked at, so that a larger problem doesn't develop because a smaller one isn't diagnosed.
So it looks like we have just a few minutes left, so we need to wrap this up and have Matilda join us again here. But we want to thank you so much for your time, everyone. We've enjoyed talking to you and answering your questions, and we certainly hope to further the discussion.
Yeah, and again, reach out to us if you have any questions, either through the company website or at info@tritons.com, and we'll be happy to help in any way we can. Matilda?
Yeah, Steve, Jim, thank you so much. Let me say, fantastic presentation, great points, and thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us today. Before I let everyone go, just a couple of points. We will be hosting a webinar in 2 weeks, so make sure you've registered for Amity's emails, and you will get the invitation in your inbox very soon, and you'll be able to register. And it's 57, so just taking a short minute before we go. Amity does a lot of webinars. We also have a blog which you can follow, but we're also a customer success management technology provider. So we have a platform that helps CSM reduce churn, manage customer life cycles, improve conversions, everything like that. And we do that by, for instance, helping you monitor health, engagement. You can collaborate with your team on playbooks. You can track any KPI that is relevant to you, and much, much more, like automating emails and things like that. So getamity.com/demo. You can go ahead and request a demo if you just want to take a tour and see what the platform looks like, see what we do, chat with an expert. We have public demos as well. So don't hesitate to go ahead, and in the next 24 hours, I'll be sending everyone the follow-up email with a link to the recording and the slides. So be ready for that in your inbox, and you can also respond to that email and let me know if you want to book a demo, and I'll put you in touch with whoever is the appropriate person. But thank you so much for being with us today for the first webinar of the year. And Jen and Steve, thank you so much again for that presentation.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amity, and thanks to everybody who joined us for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.